I wanna hold your hand.
It's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today to talk about the music.
My pleasure, my pleasure.
So let's begin our journey here before we get into your latest album by asking you this. The one thing that was huge for the world of art was living through this pandemic. How much of surviving that pandemic has either influenced this album or the way that you do things now?
Oh, so much, so very much. The current record is called Breaks Over,
Yes.
which is coming right after a record that I actually just released in June called Re-Entry. And for me, they're both very connected. Um, you know, being in New York City during the pandemic, going through almost 2 years of pretty deep, like in at-home quarantining, where I wasn't working. I work at a university as well, so I was teaching from home, pretty much staying in my apartment alone. I'm single, so I was in my studio alone. Really was probably the most traumatic thing that's ever happened to me in my life. At some point in the first summer of COVID in May, I got a call from my neighbor, who was actually a dear friend and a saxophonist that I have loved and worked with in the past. But he called me and was like, "Hey, do you want to come to the park and play in the park?" We live right across the street from Prospect Park. He's like, "Me and my other friend Steve, who's a bass player, are going to go in the park and we're just going to play." At this point, it was so early in COVID that I didn't even know that, like, are we allowed to do that?
Right.
Are we all going to die if we go do this? So we went all masked up and played in Prospect Park. And it was probably played for like 3 hours under the trees. And it was the beginning of what would then be about a year and a half of us playing in the park, which allowed me to kind of start to figure out what I can do musically, because I was on tour when all of Europe shut down and when New York City shut down. So I had to quickly come home in early March of 2020 from a tour. So everything, like, in like 3 days, every bit of my calendar got erased, right?
Yeah.
So this call and this time that we were playing in the park, and again, we're talking bass, voice, saxophone, right?
Yeah, sure.
Open air, unamplified, in the
Sure.
trees, for people, for our neighbors to just come and sit, spaced out. Everybody was really mindful of like, no, we're going to put our blanket 10 or 12 feet away.
Yeah.
So that sort of started to, without me knowing, really build not only a band for me, but build a new kind of idea of how do we create music. And because none of us had any work, we were able to play together all the time. Like, we were in my apartment, we were a pod. None of us got sick for the first 2.25 years.
Wow.
And we were doing live stream shows from my apartment. We were playing in the bar downstairs that had a big open front room that nobody was ever in. And we'd open all the doors and just play there and then live stream it. So trying to be creative in ways of making music, and also having this amazing opportunity of getting to work with guys, my friends, people that I loved making music with, but who usually were on the road all the time. So we didn't get that much opportunity. And now we had endless weeks and months of making music. So that first record, Re-Entry, which was actually recorded in late 2021, but only released this past summer, was sort of the beginning of like, maybe there will be something after this pandemic comes to an end. Maybe there will be opportunity. And maybe I can start to conceive of how to make music. Because really, I just thought, okay, I think my career might be over. I think it's gone. So coming into the end of 2022, 23, when we recorded Breaks Over, for me, that's part of this, like, you better strike now. You better
Yeah.
not waste an ounce of time or energy or options. I mean, I had played once before with Buster Williams. And I really wanted, actually, I played with him right before, in 2019, right before I got my university position, which was just a few months before the pandemic started, right? So the whole thought was, oh, I get to play with him once. This is going to be great. We're going to be able to work together again. And then it was like, it all dissipated into the ether. So when things were starting to get better and I was starting to get a little bit more footing of like, okay, I think this is just the time where I have to double and triple and quadruple down on what I want to be doing. That's when I was like, you know what? Strike while the iron's hot. Like, I'm going to call Buster and see if he wants to record a record with me. Like, the worst he can say is no, or
Right.
I'm busy, or whatever.
Yeah.
So, and he was game. He had been working with the pianist that I had started working with, Brandon McCune. So it was a really nice pairing because they have had a lot of performance experience together. And I knew I wanted to keep working with the drummer that had been on Reentry, Jay Sawyer, and who is the person I call first for every gig anyway. So I was like, we're gonna do this. And I thought I might be being a teensy bit hasty in the process of it all. But in the end, it was like, no, this is exactly the fire that needed to be reignited for me to just not let those years that sort of seemed very stagnant stop me from continuing to move forward. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of what happened in the pandemic and how it made me feel and what I had to sort of get myself out of has been the fuel for these projects and for everything that I'm doing now.
Yeah. So with Breaks Over, what are you ultimately hoping the listener gets from this album?
What a question. What am I hoping the listener gets from this album? Oh, geez. You just stumped me. What am I?
Uh-oh.
I mean, listen, I sing because I enjoy telling stories that are meaningful to me, sharing my perspective on mainly what are universal sort of stories and emotions and experiences that through the ages we all as human beings kind of go through, right?
Yeah.
I enjoy sharing that. I enjoy expressing that. And I think that it connects with other people and maybe allows them to feel that feeling as well, or be able to say, I went through that as well. And that could be unbelievable joy to really deep pain.
Yeah.
I know for me, the songs that I sing, and when I choose to sing songs that are very connected to something that hurts, it actually helps me feel better about the exact feeling that hurt me. So I hope that people are able to connect to that, and I hope I allow them that moment to just maybe spend in those thoughts of like experiences that they've had, how they have had the same or are a slightly different, or how this song might allow them a minute to like keep the Band-Aid on for something that might hurt, because I know that's what it does for me. Other than that, I hope they enjoy it. I hope it's a joyful experience rather than a sad one.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
Yeah, I dig it. Take me back to the beginnings. Where were you born and raised? How did this love of singing, of music, of jazz, how did this become your life and destiny?
Well, I mean, I was born in New York. My parents are both pastors and they were missionaries at the time. Soon after my birth, we moved to Venezuela. I'm the youngest of four. And we moved to Venezuela for my parents to do a missionary time there. We were there for about 5 years. Came back to New York after that and lived in New York, lived in New Jersey. Then when I was in junior high, we moved to Massachusetts. My father was teaching at a theological seminary, so we moved to Massachusetts and then spent a long time in Massachusetts where I went to high school. My parents actually then moved back to Puerto Rico where they live now. And I stayed in Massachusetts to do my undergrad, which kind of happened in a few pieces, and then my grad studies, and I was teaching there for a while until I moved back in 2007 to New York City to pursue jazz as the sort of central focus of my life. I didn't get into jazz until I decided to go to Berklee College of Music, and I was already in my early 20s by then. I had thought that I wanted to do musical theater, so that was like my first stint in college was musical theater, that then quickly warped into, no, actually, I heard Ella, I lost it. I was like, this woman's voice is the best thing ever. I understood the connection between the songs that she was singing coming from the musical theater realm. And I made a switch to want to try to figure out what this jazz thing was. And then I went to Berklee really as a newbie, like as an absolute, I don't know anything. I mean, God bless them, they let me in, but I was not like so many of the students now who show up so like formed.
Yeah.
Like I was not one of those. I was I had a kind of okay voice. I am sure I had a lot of spirit. But and they let me in, and I started to focus 100% on jazz. And I knew when I got to Berkeley that I just want to sing jazz and try to figure this out. And it stuck, and it's been an amazing. I have zero regret about it. I don't. I talk a lot with my students about this. Like, I don't have any aspirations to like cross over into any other genre. Like, to me, jazz is something that allows all the parts of my personality to really get expressed
Yeah.
and feel very, very highly creative. And whether that's bringing in my Latin elements to it, bringing in other Black music elements to it, I feel like jazz allows me a lot of reach that feels very authentic to the way I want to express myself.
Yeah. It's interesting you said Venezuela. Salvador Perez is like our favorite baseball player of all time here in Kansas
Ah,
City.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it's funny. Every time I hear that, it's funny. I just think about how infectious he is and the culture and all of that. That's the kind of the Latin American kind of thing. I mean, there's just it's music, it's joy, there's buoyancy. So
Yeah,
it comes out.
sure.
What was the first live jazz show you saw that blew you away?
Um, I think the first show, because I didn't get into it until I was in my like 20s already. Um, I distinctly remember being like totally shocked seeing Dee Dee Bridgewater at Scullers in Boston live with I think it was an organ trio she was with, and I believe it was the band that she had when she was back and forth living in France. So I just remember that first feeling of like how alive it was, how she like had the whole audience in the palm of her hand. It with But yet she didn't actually conform to any of the notions that I had been otherwise kind of thought of what jazz vocalists were, sleek, sexy, demure, sort of, very mysterious. Like, she was the opposite of all of that.
Yeah.
And I just felt a certain aliveness about it that I had not seen in any other concerts.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, oh my God, like it's about her personality. She's actually sharing exactly who she is. She's not trying to be this stereotypical jazz vocalist. And what I like to call her abandon in the way that she improvises, in the way that she expresses herself, which now is like my favorite thing in other singers. Like, I love Mark Murphy, who has that same level of like just utter freedom when he goes to sing. It was the beginning of me realizing like that's the kind of singing I dig. That's the kind of music I want to make, that allows me to just fully express myself, and not need to conform in any way to any sort of old-fashioned ideals that are beautiful. They were beautiful, but maybe we don't need to just keep making that mold over and over and again. So she's probably the person that I was an exceptionally affecting concert at an age where I was just like beginning to try to figure out what this music was.
Yeah.
That I remember being like, whoa, because I missed everybody.
Yeah.
Because I started late and I wasn't hip to jazz early. I didn't get to go to Betty Carter's Jazz Ahead. Like, I didn't get to see like anybody. I tried to see Abby Lincoln 5 times.
Wow.
Bought tickets, was there, and 5 times at the end of her life, she canceled due to sickness, illness, and then she passed away. And so I didn't get to see so many of the artists that have really affected me and have shaped the way I kind of approach the music. So I saw a lot of instrumental stuff once I got to New York, and that became something that was more mainstay. But for singing, my connection to it has really and truly been almost fully on recorded music.
Yeah.
And I feel like I know them. Like,
Right.
I feel like me and Betty Carter have sat and had a drink, but
Sure.
but alas, we have not.
Yes. What about Sheila Jordan? Have you caught her?
Yes, yes,
So
of course.
she's
Amazing.
man, I remember interviewing her and she had like stories about Bird and all of these older cats and she was a real champion for what was going on at that time with, the black musicians and giving them equanimity and all of those things. But what is she like live? Is she just the pistol?
Okay, Absolutely. Oh my God. I just had the opportunity this past summer to teach a jazz camp with her, which I was just sort of like, oh my goodness.
Oh yeah,
Like,
of course. She's a
this is,
legend, crazy
this
legendary.
was, yes. And so we got to spend a week together. No, she's a total pistol. You know, she's up in age. And I tell you, we would all be unbelievably blessed if we had this much charisma, energy, focus, dedication, still on the ball at where she is, or even 20 years younger, frankly. But no, she's incredible. I think so she did a concert during that week. And I've seen her a number of times. I've been a huge fan of her for a very long time. So, but that week we were all doing, every teacher was basically meant to perform one night of the week-long camp. So she did a concert early on. And I was just thinking, man, she had already been teaching a number of weeks prior, other jazz camps, and now came here. These jazz camps are very intense. Like it's all day, all night. Like it's very intense. So she comes up and does this concert. She's standing the whole time, which to me was like, oh, okay. I mean, she's in her 90s.
Yeah,
Everything's fully memorized, swinging her booty off,
yeah,
just connecting. She sang some ballads that were like, oh my God. And then also something that always warms my heart, my singer musician heart, is that schooling Ronnie Ben-Hur and Harvey S., who were playing for her, on any moment that they missed the arrangement, any moment that they weren't on point, she was like,
yeah,
just,
yeah,
and I
yeah.
was like, this woman is still so on fire and so on her game and still improvising like incredibly and with so much soul and with so much feel and groove. Yeah, no, she's a really a master of this music in such a great way, not only in what she does musically, but as you said, in the way she supports and protects and promotes this Black culture, Black music, Black musicians, and the people who created this art form.
Yeah.
And she will not be quiet about it. And I think there's something so powerful and courageous, especially nowadays, to be able to just say what you got to say and make sure that this art form that has fed her whole life continues to feed others. And no, she's a blessing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what do you like the best about being a professional musician? What gets you up every day?
I mean, I still can't get over that people pay me to sing songs. I
Yeah.
mean, that,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that still like cracks me up and makes me like, really? Okay, cool. I'll take
Yeah.
it. I'm really, I can't get over that my life is spent doing the best I can to figure out who I am and then share that with people. And that is such a beautiful gift. I think a lot about in where we are today in our sort of societal climate. I think about how grateful I am for being an improviser, that, learning how to live your life based on constantly shifting, changing, gaining new information that makes you look a different way, not only affects me musically, but affects me in how I live my day to day. And so I think being with musicians, especially jazz musicians, you're around people who are so dedicated to constantly being better. And that pours out into all parts of life, which always makes me happy to be part of that community. Yeah, I mean, I'm not even with all the frustration of how hard it is and how just it feels like everything's stacked against you oftentimes, especially financially in this career path. I still walk around really truly believing that my job is so much better than most everyone else out there.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, fans, everyone around you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Who do I think I
Who do
am?
you think you are?
I mean, I am a rather intense person who's very clear. Like, I'm okay making decisions. I'm okay giving directions. I'm okay leading things. I'm okay with all of that, which generally makes people think that I'm pretty intense, and I'm okay with that too. I'm generally a rather jolly person. I am pretty happy spirited. I really believe that if we're honest with each other, we can all say whatever we need to say and we'll still feel it with love. And that's kind of how I try to move forward in things.
Yeah.
But I'm also a New Yorker and I'm also Puerto Rican, so I'm pretty straight to the point. I don't really enjoy word salad. And so, but I really enjoy sharing who I am with people. That's something that makes me feel good. So musically, that's a big thing for me. I think, you know, I'm very transparent in the choices that I make musically. You'll learn a lot about me, but also one-on-one personally, I enjoy sharing humanity with people. I want to know who people are and I want them to know who I am. So I think, you know, that's pretty much, and I like coffee and wine.
I love it. That's great. I love it. So let me ask you this. If anyone wants to pick up Breaks Over, where's the best place that'll benefit you or catch you live? Any of the Good Business previous albums, where do they go?
Oh, great. So right now, Breaks Over is on a wonderful label run by Orrin Evans, pianist Orrin Evans, who's fantastic. So that label is called Imani Records, and you can find all his records and Breaks Over on his Bandcamp page, which is probably the best way to buy records from artists. It really contributes directly to the artist, and the way Imani Records works is a very community collaborative record label. So I would definitely point people to the Imani Records Bandcamp page. If you don't want to go there, you can definitely buy it off of my website, which is mariannesolivanjazz.com. You could buy it there, but they're going in the same direction, basically, rather than going to some other entity. But yeah, and then the rest of my records are also available. Re-Entry, which was released last June, is on a different label called Mighty Quinn, so you could find it on their on their page, website, as well as my website, and all my old past records are on there as well. And then, you know, you could always find us on the social medias.
Sure.
I'm on all of them.
Yeah, there's a lot.
For as long as I can be.
Yeah,
Every
totally.
day we see.
Yeah. Marianne, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for talking about the album, your world of music. Best of luck with everything. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Really.
Yeah.